Hi, everybody. This is Bill Simmons again with the Pacific Coast Broadband Connect. With me is Brian Chong with the City of Moorpark. Brian, I enjoyed our conversation a couple of months ago. I wanted to reach out to you and have a City of Moorpark update. How's everything going in the world of broadband?
Oh, real well, Bill. Real well, Bill. Thanks for asking, and thanks for having us back. Glad to be here. It's actually 6 months since we've chatted last. I went back and listened to it, and at that time we had just adopted our broadband strategic plan, and now 6 months in, it turns out there was no shelf up there to collect dust. We actually had to implement the plan. So just kind of what we've been up to lately. We have fully integrated our broadband efforts into our community development and city planning processes. We already have our first 5G agreement to put wireless facilities on our city-owned street lights. That's actually with AT&T. We are working already with an ISP to bring connection and service to one of our underserved business parks. We have awarded a contract to do a market study for our MeetMe Room, or our potential MeetMe Room, as part of the new Moorpark City Library. We've been working with the county on their regional middle mile network. We've also been taking a lot of baby steps, if you will, in the smart city space. There has certainly, I think, been a corner turned in the smart city technology out there. We've been doing our due diligence and exploration with a few of those.
It's easy to say that broadband is the fourth utility, but you've really embraced that as a city. I mean, it's everywhere. Some of the initiatives that you're working in, integrated is really a cool word to use when you describe it.
Yeah. I mentioned last time, getting electricity doesn't actually help you. It's not until you plug something in that you get the benefits of that. And so what we're looking at right now on the smart city side of things is to make sure that the technology is real and that it works, and that when we're plugging something into that electrical outlet, we're not plugging a fork into it. We're plugging in something that we can get utility out of. And the corner that has been turned in our experience has been, this is great technology and it's amazing what it can do, but I don't need it. It doesn't actually solve a problem in my community. What we're now seeing is vendors coming through that thought, you know what, this is something that helps our operation. It solves a problem for the residents and businesses of Moorpark. So now tell me more. And now we kind of do the, is it a fork or is it a plug kind of analysis.
I'm going to come back and ask you to talk about maybe one or two of those vendors. But in the meantime, you mentioned the middle mile network, and then you came up with this term that I've learned just recently, a MeetMe Room. What is a MeetMe Room, and why is that important to you in Moorpark?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked that question, Bill, because when it was presented to me, I asked the exact same thing. And they said, no, that's actually the name of it. And I thought it'd be much more technical. But basically what it is, if you can imagine fiber optic cables as a network of freeways, what a MeetMe Room does is it essentially serves as the off-ramp. So just as you wouldn't put a cul-de-sac on the side of the freeway, you're not really going to tap one building and then 50 feet later, another house and another 100 feet, a little apartment complex into these main lines. So the MeetMe Room is basically a point right adjacent to your long haul providers. And we have a bunch of them that actually run through the railroad that goes right through Moorpark. And we happen to be building a new library building right next to those tracks, which means that bringing in all of the connections is not a matter of going miles or through freeways or mountains. You're just going through a city-owned parking lot to a site that is where we're building our library. And so what that allows us to do is, if someone wants to enter the Moorpark market for broadband, they have to be connected to one of these long-haul fibers. And for us regionally, generally that means a connection to somewhere in downtown Los Angeles. So if someone wanted to come in, they would have to either construct or lease existing fiber optic connections to downtown LA, and they pay a per foot, cost for that. If we have a MeetMe Room here in Moorpark, what happens is they only have to start here. So it greatly reduces the cost of entry to the market. Now, our concern is the worst case scenario we can have is we spend money and build this MeetMe Room, and then nobody wants to use it, and we've wasted all of this money. So what we're doing right now is we have commissioned a market study that will reach out to ISPs that operate in the region and say, hey, if we build this, are you interested in being in there? And if there's enough interest that it makes it reasonable and feasible to do, then we'll go ahead and build it. And if for some reason there's not interest, then we're not going to waste taxpayer dollars, building a very, very well insulated and very, very well electrified storage room for our library.
But it literally is an off-ramp on the information superhighway.
That's exactly what it is. It's, here's my ISP servers meeting my long haul fibers. And, I will say, having talked about it with our architect and engineer here, it is a lot of electricity and a lot of protection to make sure those connections are stable. And, it's a lot of electronics in there.
It's really exciting that you guys are stepping out on behalf of our region and putting it there and offering to host it. And just from a consortium standpoint, we're thankful for your leadership. It's great. Now let's talk about smart city. I mean, we've had a couple of conversations. There's some things that make no sense, and then there's some things that you've been actually experimenting with. I seem to recall signboards at one point, automated.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about some of the smart city lessons learned so far?
Yeah, so since you brought it up, I'll kind of start with the sign company, and I'll actually even name them SUFA Signs. We engaged, every government agency and every person, frankly, is looking to expand their outreach capabilities, right? We want a well-informed citizenry. We want to let our residents and businesses know what's going on. And so we engaged discussions with a smart sign company. And their innovations are several things. Their model was they stick a sign that's completely self-contained, solar powered, does not need Wi-Fi. You just literally 4 bolts to the ground, and we can put out messaging through it, such as, hey, there's a new construction here, or hey, tell us what you think, or hey, here's how to get a vaccine or get tested for COVID, whatever it is. And their business model was they actually could count pedestrians going by, and they would sell ad space at the bottom of these signs. So while we're saying, hey, here's how to get a COVID vaccine, below that there is, hey, mention this ad at the taco bar down the street and get 20% off, right? And it was at no cost to the city, and it would help our local businesses. It was a win. It is actually something that we are still hoping to pursue, but the location that we all wanted actually is being redeveloped as part of our downtown. And the thought was, we don't want to put this beautiful sign that's helpful and then immediately for the next year and a half have it be in a construction zone and everyone walking on the other side of the street, right? So we put that one on hold for a little bit, but we did share that with other cities and who are in the region, and they're interested in the technology because, again, we're all in this together and we're trying to help each other. Another company that we're looking at is, again, one that we found that actually solves a real world problem. And it's essentially a remote data sensing technology. And so, one of the things that we do here in Moorpark, and you wouldn't be surprised given our names, but we take very good care of our parks. And as part of that process, we're replacing playground equipment, which lasts quite a long time, but you have to replace it. It gets old, new things come along. And so, what we would do now is when we're selecting new playground equipment, we want to see, hey, what's in? What are the kids like these days, right? Well, today, what that means is we take some recreation folks and we give them a clipboard and they say, oh, we had this many kids and the carousel and this many kids on the rock climbing wall. And they literally sit there for hours and hours and hours. And, with these kind of passive sensory systems, what they can do is you just stick it there. And, you want to have some, language there saying, we're not filming you, we're not taking pictures, there's no images actually. But what it'll say is like, okay, from this time to this time, here's how many kids came onto the playground, and this many went to the slide, and this many went to the swing set, and this many went to the carousel, and no kids went to the seesaw. And so when we're picking out equipment, we don't need to look at seesaws anymore. And it's just a much faster way of getting data. It's probably more accurate because when you have a live person there, they have to go to lunch, they might have to use the restroom, and now, we don't have to worry about that.
So one thing that makes Moorpark stand out in terms of comparing it to all the other cities in Ventura County is you own your streetlights.
Yeah.
That's a tremendous opportunity as well from a smart city tech area, perspective. Have you thought about use of the streetlights at all?
Well, absolutely. And we actually have our first fruit on that, right?
Right.
Shortly after we adopted our broadband strategic plan and completed the purchase of the streetlights, we immediately began, the sprint with AT&T. I shouldn't say the sprint with AT&T, but the quick quick moving and negotiating with AT&T, and that did culminate in our first agreement with the telecom provider, and that governs what's needed to get 5G facilities here in Moorpark, and for AT&T customers, chance to get 5G cell data. Others, of course, we expect to follow. And then looking for other technologies, and we're very honored to have our streetlight vendor providing essentially a Moorpark style streetlight to coastal Trident for all of these other emerging technologies that want to say, hey, we have technologies that are perfect for mounting there. Yeah. Let's do it. And when we went up and bought our streetlights, what we actually did to finance it is we swapped out the old sodium fixtures with much more efficient LED fixtures. So we're saving a lot of money. Well, when we're up there, we also on every streetlight put an industry standard plug, which means that it's just a simple plug and play for any vendor who wants to come on to our streetlights in the future. And again, it's just while you're there, make it easier for the future. We don't know what we're going to put up there. These firms at Coastal Trident are going to show off their technology, to test their technology. And it's just a matter of time before these things become into what we're looking for ideally, which is ways to solve community problems. That's what we do as a local government.
Yep. Well, the consortium really appreciates the fact that you show leadership in all of these areas. I mean, if we could just have all the success stories, all the best practices coming out of Moorpark, it'd be great, because you've got that integrated approach. Once again, is saying it's not only broadband for all, but it's broadband everywhere. And that's something that you're going to be the model for quite a while, that a lot of the other municipalities will be following. Brian, thank you for being here.
All right, thank you for having me.
So thank you everybody for watching. We'll look forward to Brian once again making an appearance, hopefully sooner than the next 6 months. And we just appreciate you being part of Pacific Coast Broadband Connect. We'll see you next time.